Clooney testifies. Senator in Epstein file. Arrested. Kash Patel reveals. Shocking secrets of Vault 7. The courtroom was ice cold, not just in temperature, but in atmosphere. A slow tension hung in the air like a storm before it breaks. Cameras clicked. Journalists scribbled, but everyone was waiting for one thing. Kash Patel? He entered without a word, holding a red folder. No briefcase, no entourage. Just that thick crimson file that seemed to hum with secrets. The room didn't know it yet, but history had just walked through the door. Behind him sat Dan Bongino, calm but his eyes sharp. A soldier in a suit. They weren't here to speculate. They were here to unload. Across the aisle, Diddy sat behind his attorneys. Sunglasses off, jaw tight. He wasn't performing today. This wasn't a stage or a nightclub. It was a reckoning. Court is now in session. Judge Mallory's voice cracked like a whip. The bailiff read the charges. RICO, human trafficking, coercion, obstruction, a network. A system, a rot. Then came the whisper. Epstein. Though long dead, his name echoed like a ghost in the marble room. Files had surfaced. Evidence once sealed. And this trial. Diddy's trial wasn't just about a fallen mogul. It was about the others. The powerful. The protected. Kash Patel, you may approach. He didn't hesitate. He laid the red folder on the witness table like a blade unsheathed. His eyes met the judge's. What I'm about to share, he said, was never supposed to see daylight. Gasps, murmurs. Inside the folder, classified logs, seized hard drives, statements from agents, some retired, some missing. There were photos too, screenshots, time-stamped, private flights, lavish homes, and guests. Guests whose names were never meant to be read aloud. The prosecutor, a woman with eyes like razors, leaned in. Mr. Patel, can you confirm this material originated from the 2019 raid on Little St. James and 2 2023 federal seizures of properties owned by Mr. Combs? He nodded. And you're saying this was suppressed? Suppressed, he said, buried, redacted, and in some cases burned. Gasps again. Then a deeper name, Epstein. Patel's testimony began to weave the web. Flight manifests. Surveillance footage. Password-protected vaults. The kind of thing designed to vanish unless someone knew exactly where to look. That red folder, said the judge. Why now? Because the walls are cracking, said Patel. And the silence has a body count. He didn't need to elaborate. The courtroom knew. The disappearances, the suicides, the non-disclosure agreements signed in rooms with no cameras, no clocks. Then came the video. It was brief, blurry, but real. A gathering at a private villa. Music played, laughter. And then the shift movement toward the private suite. Figures entering. One clearly Diddy. Another a man resembling a now-sitting U.S. senator. The scene that followed was cut. It was enough. The gallery sat in stunned quiet. Even Diddy's defense team looked shaken, but the red folder wasn't finished. There's more, Kash said. Of course there was. The silence after the video was suffocating. Judge Mallory leaned forward, fingertips together. This court will recess for 10 minutes. She announced, her voice tighter, now controlled like a drawn bow. Mr. Patel remained on the stand. Diddy's attorney stood up, pale and damp around the collar. Your Honor, we object. Sit, the judge cut in. This is not theater. When the courtroom emptied, Kash Patel remained. The red folder still lay open like a wound. He didn't glance at it. He was focused on the quiet hallway outside. Somewhere out there, someone was already making a call. To panic. To silence. Dan Bongino moved to the witness box and leaned in, whispering, You sure about Clooney, Kash? Gave a single nod. He's next. The door creaked open. George Clooney walked in. Calm, deliberate. Not a movie star now. A man. He looked older than the magazines showed, like he hadn't slept properly in years. He avoided Diddy's gaze completely. Then he sat. When the courtroom reconvened, the judge nodded to the prosecutor. Call your next witness. We call George Clooney to the stand. A ripple of gasps again, reporters fumbled for their pens, he was sworn in. He cleared his throat. "I'm here because the lies have weight." Clooney said, his voice low but firm. "And I've carried mine long enough." "You attended gatherings hosted by Mr. Combs?" the prosecutor asked. Clooney nodded. "Yes, several. Over the years. Did you witness any criminal activity?" Pause. "There were things you chalk up to excess, to industry culture. At first it was the parties, loud music, champagne towers. Then the rules started to change. No phones, no names, no questions." He looked out across the courtroom. His voice trembled for a moment. "I didn't know what I was looking at until it was too late. Did you see underage individuals involved in these parties?" Another pause. "I didn't want to believe it at the time," he said, "but yes. There were moments I'll never forget. And there were faces I recognized." Whose Clooney's jaw worked like it took effort to say it aloud? Senator Tom Tillis, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, all present. Sometimes separately, sometimes together. The gallery erupted. Even seasoned reporters lost their composure. Diddy turned, whispering furiously to his lead attorney. Judge Mallory slammed the gavel once. "Order." "Mr. Clooney," the prosecutor continued, "how do you know these men?" "I've been in politics long enough to know who shakes hands in the back rooms. The appearances were unofficial, but they were there. Can you confirm they were aware of what was happening?" Clooney exhaled slowly. "They didn't leave." Kash Patel nodded slightly from the stand. The silence now wasn't just tension. It was weight. Years of secrecy pressing down. Did Mr. Combs ever imply he had leverage over these men? Yes. In private, he bragged often. About videos, about insurance files, about safes no one could find. A man from the gallery stood suddenly shouting, "This is a setup, you can't trust actors." Before security dragged him out, Kash recognized him, former aide, to one of the senators named. The panic had already started to spill. The prosecutor pulled out a USB drive. "With the court's permission, we'd like to enter new video evidence discovered within Mr. Combs' seized private server from the 2023 Los Angeles raid." Permission was granted. The video played. It was cleaner this time. A polished estate, a sprawling mansion, late night. Diddy and two unnamed men laughing over drinks. One of them was masked clumsily, a poor attempt at hiding identity, but the eyes were familiar. Cold, calculated. The room watched as a young woman was ushered in. Diddy whispered to her. She nodded. The video paused. The judge stared at the screen, then looked at Diddy. "We'll reconvene tomorrow morning," she said. "This session is adjourned." Outside, protesters had gathered. Some shouted for justice. Some carried signs bearing names that weren't in the news yet, but soon would be. Inside a dark corridor, Kash Patel handed Dan Bongino a list. 10 names, all of them matching data in the red folder. "This isn't just about Diddy," he whispered. Dan read the names. "This is a political detonation. And we just lit the fuse?" Kash replied. The courthouse looked different the next morning. Not just because of the crowd, though it had doubled with reporters climbing barricades and choppers circling above, but because of the air. Heavier. Sharpened. Like everyone now knew the stakes. Inside, Kash Patel stood alone in the hallway, waiting. Today's testimony would push the trial past scandal. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. Not just about obscene parties, or grainy videos, or whispered names. It was about control. Who had it? Who lost it? And who paid the price for pretending they didn't know? Dan Bongino walked up beside him holding a burner phone. "They tapped your apartment," he said. "Twice. Found the bug near the air vent." Kash didn't blink. Not surprised. "They know you still have the master list." "I have 5 copies," he replied. "Scattered, locked, watched." Dan smirked, but his eyes were ice. "I hope you wrote your will." The courtroom buzzed like a hornet nest when the judge entered. No time was wasted. "Mr. Patel," the prosecutor began, "yesterday you mentioned a pattern of suppression. Today, we ask you to walk us through how the system worked." Kash straightened. "You're not going to like the answer." He stepped down from the witness stand and approached a monitor. One click, an interface bloomed across the screen. It was a diagram. Names, arrows, redacted faces. And at the center, the black room. This, he said, pointing, is where the cleanup happens. The real cleanup. The diagram showed a hidden interagency unit established after the Epstein fallout unofficial off-book with ties to FBI, CIA, and a subnetwork of federal contractors. No agency wanted to own it, but they all used it. Kash scrolled. Here's the 2019 Little St. James raid team roster. Notice anything? He highlighted 2 names, same team used in the 2023 Diddy seizure, same agents, different warrant, different state. The courtroom leaned in. These 2 agents, he continued, never filed their logs. One resigned, the other is missing. Gone. Vanished. He clicked again. A grainy image appeared, a server room, empty racks, torn wires. This was taken 10 minutes after the seizure team left Diddy's Miami home. A drone caught it. The tech was gutted. So where's the data? Another click. Blackroom server logs show a mirrored backup done remotely. They took it. They've had it for months. The prosecutor looked stunned. And the evidence we have here is what I intercepted, not what they stored. They have more. Diddy's lawyer interrupted. Your Honor, this is conjecture. Sit, the judge snapped. Then the prosecutor pulled out a document. Mr. Patel, this subpoena just returned. Would you confirm the signature Kash took the file? He recognized it instantly. A transfer order, dated 6 days after Diddy's property was raided. The name signed at the bottom, Senator Lindsey Graham. Gasps again. Kash looked to the judge. This proves congressional obstruction. The courtroom exploded, but Kash wasn't done. He gestured to the screen again. I want to talk about the guests. A new list appeared, redacted names, but Kash read them aloud. Politicians, executives, 1 Supreme Court clerk, a Hollywood director, 2 anchors from major cable news networks, and 3 foreign diplomats. All seen according to flight records and badge scans entering properties tied to either Epstein or Diddy. Now, let me show you what was found in Diddy's server backups. Images filled the screen, blurred, censored, but suggestive. Hotel rooms, pools, villas, groups. One photo caught the room, a smiling senator arms around 2 unidentified individuals, clearly underage. It lasted just 3 seconds. The judge ordered the image taken down. Enough, she said, but her voice shook. This is what they buried, Kash said. This is what they think the American people will never see. Then the lights flickered. A power surge hit the courtroom. The screen went black. Silence again. Outside, sirens began to wail. Dan was already moving. That's not a surge, he muttered. That's a message. Security entered. Judge Mallory raised a hand. We continue, she said. Nothing stops this court unless I'm in the ground. Applause erupted in the gallery. Just for a second. Then the bailiff whispered into her ear. She turned pale, looked to Kash. We've just been informed, she said, that one of the agents you referenced earlier, Agent Royce Marks, was found dead in his apartment this morning. Gunshot wound, no note. Kash closed his eyes. That's number 5, he whispered. Judge Mallory looked out over the courtroom. We're issuing federal protection for Mr. Patel effective immediately. This court is entering sealed session tomorrow. No cameras, no press. The media groaned, protested, but the judge didn't flinch. Dan leaned close to Kash. We're poking a dragon, man. I know, he said. That's why I sharpened the spear. Outside the courthouse, a second wave of protest had begun. But this time, it wasn't about justice for victims. It was about the cover-up. People weren't just angry. They were waking up. Rain fell like bullets on the roof of the federal courthouse. The morning air was thick with sirens, tension, and smoke from distant protest flares. But inside courtroom 3B, something colder than weather had taken root, paranoia. After the power surge, the judge's emergency session had gone underground. No cameras, no public seating, only key personnel. Kash Patel sat flanked by 2 marshals. His eyes never left the door. Dan Bongino stood nearby, reading off his phone. Another server just went dark, he muttered. London node. Burned, not wiped. Cash whispered, "They're not just cleaning, they're closing shop." Judge Mallory entered, and her presence cut through the static. "Bring in the witness." The doors opened. The gallery cleared now, except for law enforcement, and court staff watched as a man stepped into view. A limp, a cane, dark coat, sunglasses indoors. He removed them slowly. Senator Tom Tillis. A collective jolt moved through the room. Even Diddy, now in chains at the defense table, raised his head. Tillis took the stand, no oath needed. His lawyer stood beside him, silent. "I'm not here to save myself," Tillis began. "I'm here because I know they're going to kill me anyway." You could hear a pin drop. They won't let me walk out of this building. But I've seen what's coming, and I'd rather burn my sins than die pretending they weren't mine. Cash narrowed his eyes. "Why now?" Tillis looked directly at him. "Because I heard what you said yesterday. About the black room. About the cleanup crew. And I know you're right." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Senator, are you admitting you were involved in a coordinated cover-up of criminal activity involving minors and public officials?" Tillis gave a broken chuckle. "That's cute. Cover-up. It was more than that. It was procurement. It was negotiation. It was insurance." He looked at the judge. "You want your truth? Your honor. Here it is. We built a network. Not just me. Lindsay, Mitch, others. We didn't just attend those parties. We made sure they happened because every photo, every video, every name was a leash, on whom the prosecutor asked." Tillis didn't blink. "Everyone." Cash leaned in. Even Presidents nod, especially presidents. Gasps erupted in the sealed courtroom. The judge didn't stop it this time. "Who ran it?" A pause. Then Tillis spoke the name Greystone. Dan blinked. "The defense contractor? No. That's the shell." Greystone was the handshake behind the curtain. Private intel, private funding, no congressional oversight. Their job wasn't national security. It was elite security. Leverage, extraction, silence. He held up a USB drive. I made a copy. Not of everything, but enough. I didn't do it to be noble. I did it to keep myself alive. But now, it's useless. The judge stood. "We're taking a recess to enter this into sealed evidence." But before she could bang the gavel, boom. The lights exploded again. This time it wasn't a surge. A wall shook. Court officers swarmed the chamber. "Evacuate someone," screamed. "We've got a breach." But Judge Mallory raised her voice over the chaos. "No one leaves. Not until that drive is secured." U.S. Marshals formed a wall around the evidence desk. Dan tackled Cash behind the bench. Diddy dove under the table. Through the double doors, a smoke canister rolled in, but nothing exploded. Instead, a voice. Distorted. Broadcast. "You were warned? This trial is over. The names stay buried. Or more bodies will be." Then silence again. Judge Mallory grabbed the mic. "We are not afraid of your threats." Tillis sat frozen, hand gripping the USB like a crucifix. And then another twist. Lindsey Graham appeared. No security. No lawyer. Just him, breathless and soaked from the storm. "I want to speak," he said, "before someone makes me disappear too." Gasps again. This time even Cash froze. Graham took the center floor, nodding at Tillis, who looked like he'd seen a ghost. "I should have never let it go this far," Graham began. "I should have stopped it when we had the chance." Cash asked. "What changed?" Graham pointed at the USB. "That drive isn't just files. It's the roster. The full one. Greystone's asset list. Everyone they've ever held something over. Everyone they've ever invited to a villa, a yacht, a basement." "And you're on it?" the prosecutor asked. He nodded. "So are half the people running this country." The room went ice cold. He stepped toward the bench. "I'm here because I don't want to die in a plane crash or hanging from a doorknob. I'm here because maybe if I help, I can earn back a scrap of my soul." The judge signaled the officers. They approached Graham. "I'll testify. Fully. You protect me, I'll burn it all." Cash whispered to Dan. "We just cracked the Senate." Dan didn't smile. We just made ourselves targets. Suddenly, the bailiff's radio buzzed. We have a problem. The screen flickered back to life. Live feed A fire had broken out at a Greystone facility in Virginia, one of their black sites. The judge stared at the monitor. I want every agent from DHS FBI and the Marshal Service in this courtroom before sundown, she barked. This is no longer a trial. This is an exposure. The courtroom trembled with purpose. Kash reached for the red folder. The original. Untouched. Still full. He pulled out the last document and handed it to the prosecutor. Unseal this. It was a ledger. Codenamed accounts. Wire transfers. Hundreds of millions laundered through entertainment companies, shell NGOs, and even climate charities. From victim silence payouts to bribes for foreign cooperation. The prosecutor read the bottom line aloud. Final beneficiary? Sion Combs. Diddy looked up. You think this ends with me? He said, voice hollow. No, Kash replied, standing. It ends with the truth. Night fell hard over Washington, D.C., but the lights inside the courthouse never dimmed. Judge Mallory had ordered a 24-hour lockdown. Federal protection was stationed at every hallway corner. No one was allowed in. No one was allowed out. Not anymore. Inside the black site ledger was already being dissected by a rotating team of forensic accountants, former intelligence officers and cybercrime experts flown in overnight. But every answer only led to another door. Another name. At the center of it all, Kash Patel stood by the sealed evidence locker. One hand rested on the red folder. The other held a worn notebook, the last entries written in cramped, urgent handwriting. Greystone has fallback hubs in Zurich, Panama. Dubai. Lindsay flipped. Tom's Drive. Roster plus client IDs. Still missing vault number 7. Combs called it the keep safe, possible link to Epstein FBI non-digital archive. Clooney's follow-up confirmed. Wants to testify again. At 2:37 a.m., the lights flickered again, but this time nothing exploded. Instead, a voice came through the courthouse loudspeakers. A voice no one had heard in over a decade. Calm, mocking. Do you think you've won? Everyone froze? Dan Bongino grabbed his pistol instinctively. That's not a system glitch, he said. That's a breach. Kash locked eyes with the nearest marshal. Shut the audio grid, but the voice continued. This trial is a candle in a hurricane. Truth doesn't matter. Only who buries it deeper. Then static. The room plunged into murmurs again until the side door opened. The judge entered with 3 U.S. senators behind her. Senator Hawthorne, Senator Montero, Senator Kessler. Independent? Moderate? Reformist? Clean? We've seen the ledger, Kessler said flatly. We've seen enough. A special prosecutorial tribunal is being formed. Effective immediately, this case transitions to sovereign investigation. Kash narrowed his eyes. You're federalizing it. We're doing more than that, Montero added. We're disbanding Greystone. Cheers broke out. Mallory raised a hand. That's not all. Arrest warrants have been issued. She looked at the guards. For Mitch McConnell, for Lindsey Graham, and for 5 Greystone executives operating under diplomatic immunity. The moment hit like a bell toll. But the red folder was still open. Still unfinished. We're not done yet, Kash said. There's one name left. Dan blinked. Who? Kash turned the page. A bank account. Offshore. Untouched for years, but suddenly activated 2 nights ago. The name Pamela R. Mallory. The judge. The room fell into a hush, colder than death. Mallory's lips parted. Her gavel hand froze. Dan stepped between her and Kash instantly. You moved millions through Combs' shell companies, Kash said quietly, disguised as endowments. How long were you covering for them? Mallory didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. Regret. Fear. Calculation. One beat passed, then another. She raised her hand, slowly placing the gavel down. Marshal, she said softly, take me into custody. The silence cracked. Kessler stepped forward. You served justice when it mattered. That won't be forgotten. But the damage was done. Trust was gone. Even here in the one room still clinging to the idea that truth could survive. Outside protests had turned into full-blown civic rage. National Guard units stood by. Leaks had flooded Twitter and Telegram. Anonymous had returned. The word Greystone trended worldwide. At sunrise, Kash gave his final statement before cameras were turned back on. Standing before the courthouse steps flanked by Dan and George Clooney, he faced the sea of reporters. I never wanted fame. I didn't want revenge. I wanted sunlight. What we uncovered wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a business. A machine. With rules. With contracts. With clients. And for years it thrived in silence. He held up the red folder one last time. This folder was supposed to vanish, but it didn't. And now it belongs to the people. He handed it to the clerk of the tribunal, who placed it in a sealed glass case, guarded by 6 armed agents. In the crowd, someone screamed, "What about Diddy?" Kash looked directly into the camera. Diddy's story isn't over. The keepsafe still exists. Vault 7 is still out there. And every name that wasn't burned in that server fire, we're coming for them. The press surged. A chopper hovered above, but Kash didn't flinch. That night, Diddy was transferred to a maximum security facility in Colorado. No bail, no press, no visitors. 3 hours later, 2 guards on rotation went missing. The security footage was blank. Diddy never made it to his cell. The headlines the next day read, "Combs escapes federal custody in daring Black Ops raid." Vault 7. Now primary target Congress launched an emergency internal review. Senator Tillis was found dead in his holding unit. No sign of trauma. No drugs. Just a smile carved into the wall, in blood. Above it, written in jagged letters, "The room never closes," and then one last twist. The sealed red folder stored under federal protection was swapped. The forensic ink failed authentication. The real folder gone. Kash Patel, now under 24-hour guard, wrote one sentence in his next field note: "There's always a deeper room." 10 days had passed since the raid. Sean Diddy Combs had vanished, his federal transport intercepted en route to Colorado. The 2 guards assigned to his detail were still listed as missing. The vehicle's GPS had been scrambled by military-grade jammers. Whatever happened, it wasn't a rescue. It was a retrieval. Inside an undisclosed location, possibly underground, possibly foreign, Diddy sat in front of a cold metal terminal. No lights, just a faint blue glow from the screen. A voice filtered in through an intercom, artificial mechanical, yet vaguely human. Input passphrase. He leaned forward. "Keep safe. Delta 7 Nova. Code accepted." Behind him, footsteps approached. Not heavy measured, professional. Whoever this was, they weren't new to black sites. The figure stopped in the doorway. Diddy didn't turn around. "You got me out," he muttered. "So I assume you want something." The figure stepped into view, a tall woman in a matte black suit. No insignia. Eyes hidden behind smart lenses. "We want the ledger fragment you didn't give Patel," she said. "Vault 7 wasn't complete, but you have the backup." He smirked. "It's encrypted 6 layers deep." She stepped closer. "Then you'll start decrypting." Diddy's voice dropped low. "And if I don't?" She leaned down, whispering in his ear. "Then we give you to the ones who still believe in justice." A moment passed. Then his hand moved to the keyboard. Meanwhile, in an undisclosed safe house outside Alexandria, Virginia, Kash Patel reviewed satellite footage. Dan Bongino stood behind him, arms crossed. "You think the footage from Moldova is him?" Dan asked. Kash didn't answer. He zoomed in on a time-stamped blur, less than 1 second long, but there it was, Diddy flanked by 2 armed escorts entering an old Soviet comms bunker. "We were wrong," Kash said. "Greystone wasn't the top of the pyramid." Dan frowned. "You saying there's something above Greystone?" Kash picked up a fresh folder from the table. This one wasn't red. It was black. And on the cover, embossed in silver foil, only 2 words: Project Cassandra.